Good evening, folks. Talks It About with me, Jamie. I don't have a wingman or a wingwoman this time. It's just me and you. Very intimate. Tonight I want to talk to you about a ginger menace that has an almost inexplicable enduring appeal. No matter what happens, he doesn't seem to die. That's right, I am of course talking about Ed Sheeran. Of course not, it's Chucky! Hi, my name's Chucky, wanna play? Because there's a new TV show that's just finished airing in the States, co-produced by SyFy. And before I tell you what I thought of it in another video, I want to tell you what I thought I'd think about it. Based on where Chucky came from. And of course Chucky came from probably the horror heyday of the 70s and 80s. I don't think we'll ever see the likes of those kind of, that pedigree and of horror icon. But it didn't go very well for the rest of the bunch. In a lot of cases the first movie was great, but over familiarity and over exploration and killed it. So let's look at Chucky's stablemates and find out why expectations were so low for a new Chucky project. Late 70s, this guy came along. That of course is Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was loosely inspired by the exploits of a serial killer called Ed Gein. But to be honest, it doesn't matter how you pronounce his name. The guy was a fucking whack job. That's all you really need to know. He grew up in a farm in the arse end of nowhere with abusive dad and a kind of mentally unstable mother, and it's probably quite apt that they call it the Bible Belt, because young Ed was force-fed the Bible and he was belted a lot, and he became a necrophiliac serial killer. So there's a cautionary tale in there somewhere. It's not explicitly the reason that I didn't want to lead my kids to religion, but you know, nobody wants that. I'm not saying that all religious people are potentially necrophiliac serial killers, of course, but some of them. So yeah, Ed, when his parents died, he was left behind on the farm, quite a nervy, sort of mousy, on the surface of it, unassuming guy, but yeah, he dug up his mum. I don't know if he had sex with her. I don't think that matters. Because, you know, that's bad enough. You know, so say, I dug up my mum. Did you have sex with her? No. Phew! Fucking thank God for that. Thought you were some kind of weirdo. Yeah, that's pretty bad. So the film is loosely based. Ed Gein never cut about with a chainsaw. That was... he was invented for the film Old Leatherface. And fun fact, Ed Gein also provided the inspiration for the Psycho films. He was sort of like the real life template for Norman Bates, so a bit of a twofer. I can't think of many other serial killers that have directly inspired two of the sort of greatest horror icons of recent decades. So, you know, Ted Bundy, you were okay, but yeah. Did they make a movie about you? No. Should have tried harder. So yeah, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I've seen it once when I was in my early 20s, and it has, I don't need to see it again, it's stuck with me, because it's grimy, and it's raw, and it's dirty, and it's visceral. It's a really, really unpleasant film. And that obviously, if you're describing a horror film, is something of a compliment, really. It fills you with dread, and I think there aren't any gimmicks. The director is very much of the... It's very functional, and the film quality is very amateurish. It was obviously shot on quite a small budget. And that, if anything, amplifies the horror, because it almost seems, if not real, then it's, you know, it's very immediate. You feel almost like you're there. There's not the sort of slick sheen of artifice and effects that separates you from the subject matter. You're in there. You're on the front line, and it's horrible. And there's a guy in a wheelchair. There's a disabled character, and he is well, he's a complete prick. He's a really, really unpleasant character, really obnoxious. You just want him to die, and he does. He dies brutally. And I remember when that happened, I thought, yes! Not because I'm some sort of closet Nazi who wishes for the extermination of the disabled, you understand? Just want to put that rider in there. No, it's just when a horror movie does that, especially from a modern perspective, you kind of think, if there's a kid, if there's a dog, if there's a guy in a wheelchair, they're not getting killed. Do you know what I mean? Maybe your own innate goodness kind of says, oh, no, don't want to see that. So when the movie does that, it kind of signals, all bets are off. Do you know what I mean? And that just amplifies the dread again, because you think if they can off, okay, he was a bit fat and gobby, but maybe he didn't deserve to die. But they killed him, and that just makes it more infused with existential horror. There's a scene where your man Leatherface grabs one. It's a group of kids in a van. It's not a very elaborate story. It's like every film of that type that came after. A group of kids in a van take a wrong turn, or what's this? They investigate something. Boom, 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 boom. Dead. Except for the final girl, of course. The final girl trope is very much alive in this one. But there's a dude, Leatherface, just grabs him, and he clonks him over the head with a mallet, sticks him on a hook to bleed him out. You see his legs sort of trembling, and it's horrible. It's really horrible. And again, because there's no music, there's no kind of do. It just happens. It's so functional, and it's brutal, and it's disturbing. 20 years later, it still gives me kind of, oh, Jesus. And there's a scene, of course, the final girl stumbles into it's not just Leatherface and the sort of Ed Gein inspired dude. There's like a whole family of fucking nutcases, and the final girl is forced to endure a meal with them in a house that's got lampshades that are made of human skin, and ornaments and furniture made of bones, and a room that's just like a big pile of bones. And it's scary again, because you can feel the girl's horror, but the nutcases around her, it's like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party on acid with serial killers. You can tell it's normal for them. They don't see that they're really doing anything wrong. It's just like a bit of fun. And again, the sort of juxtaposition of what should be like a family who think they're having a normal meal as they get ready to kill this girl. They're obviously relishing her discomfort. It's horrible. It genuinely is horrible. But the problem was they brought this guy back. I mean, that film should have just stood alone. It would stand the test of time. It's one of those movies. I think there's been 2 or 3 sequels. They even what they did was they attempted to give a backstory and like an origin story and look. And the newer films, of course, were shot on proper film. They looked just like any other identikit horror movie that you could possibly imagine. So it lost its sheen, and he lost his mojo, man. They overused him. They over-explained him. Shite. Dead. Then, of course, in the late 70s as well, this guy came along. Now, there's an argument to be made that these two are always vying for who is the most iconic 70s, 80s horror baddie. I'm sure you've got your own thoughts on that. But Michael Myers, probably not inspired or based on any particular serial killer, but you could possibly argue that largely white middle-class families were kind of insulated from the bulk of the murder and the crime that would go on in the ghettos, in the cities. They were safe from that, but they weren't safe from the likes of Ted Bundy and blah blah blah. Their little sleepy, cozy, affluent suburbia could be penetrated, by a remorseless killer who didn't really have a plan. It wasn't revenge. He was just wanting to cut people up and have sex with them and things like that. So, and it always makes me think. It reminds me of the stories of M.R. James, a famous horror writer. When you think of horror, you think the dark, haunted house, like a disused subway sort of thing. M.R. James could make you afraid of the daylight. He would ape convention and sort of, you know, the dark, daylight won't save you, a nice familiar environment won't save you. And it's a similar kind of thing here, Sleepy Suburbia. But I can't imagine the horrors of Halloween resonating too much in like the projects and the ghettos, because I can imagine a little black kid thinking, well, my gran's just died of a crack overdose, my mum's got AIDS, 6 of my cousins were killed in a drive-by this morning, and I've just been shot in the thorax. I'm not really scared of a middle-aged white guy with a knife wearing a William Shatner mask. And it also makes me think, how long do you think this guy would last in downtown LA, or in the Bronx or something like that? I would wager not long. Not long at all. So there's something of, you know, lots of other poor people of all ethnicities had a lot of things to be scared about, and it's always like, oh, you know, let's scare the white people, because their life is quite cushy in comparison, so we need this guy. The first Halloween film was John Carpenter helmed that one. Very minimalist, very atmospheric, a very brutally effective horror movie. Yeah, it just worked on every level. Just really efficient, really still quite effective, and still quite scary now, I suppose. Well, maybe not. Viewed objectively, maybe we've all been saturated with horror movies and the kind of tropes that the movie deals with, but it was a solid first outing. So obviously they thought, this movie's been a success, I know what we'll do, we'll make 12 more of them. And they did make 12 more of them, and most of them were shit, because again, it's the thing, I think the second film was okay, where Jamie Lee Curtis was revealed to be this guy's sister. The third one, they went a bit left field, and it was like a standalone scary Halloween thing with no connection to Michael Myers. They wanted to make it more of an anthology thing. And then as it came on, they kind of thought, it's a bit unrealistic that this guy hasn't been killed yet, so they gave him some sort of supernatural thing, blah blah blah, it goes on and on, reboot, remake, reboot, reimagining, all the way up to present day, where the most recent Halloween film, Halloween Kills, was terrible. Really, really terrible. It thought it was making a comment on mob justice, and also it thought it could be smarter than it was, but it couldn't. And it still had a lot of the same ridiculous stuff, like Michael Myers has killed about 50 people in this small town, and a group of kids in the last one, group of kids and their dad drive up to the house where they know Michael Myers is, and the older guy goes to get out of the car and he goes, "Dad, don't go," and he's like, and he goes, and it's almost like in his head he's thinking, yeah, he might have killed 50 people in the town, but there's one thing he hasn't counted on: a fat middle-aged white guy. That'll fucking sort him out, and it doesn't. He obviously gets brutally murdered. Yeah, so diminished returns. Milking it until it's dry and dead, until people can't even remember what they liked about the original movie. So dead in the water. And then of course there's this guy, Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th movies. He's of course what happens if you order Michael Myers from Wish. First film, of course you know, unless you're Drew Barrymore in Scream, in which case you'll die for it. He wasn't the killer in the first film, it was Jason Voorhees' mum. In the second movie, Jason makes an appearance, but he doesn't have the iconic hockey mask. He's got a kind of Hessian sack over his head. And then again, they bring him back. There is a definite supernatural angle. He just keeps coming back. Let's put him on a boat. Let's put him in the city. And then inevitably, let's put him in space. And actually, Jason X, the one that is set in space, it's a guilty pleasure. I actually quite like that. And then they even crossed it over with this guy. There was Freddy versus Jason at the end of one of his movies. He dies, but you see Freddy's glove come up and snatch Jason's hockey mask and pull it under the ground. And I thought Jason versus Freddy was a lot of fun, actually. I remember I went to the cinema to see it. It was we live in an age of crossovers and all sorts of things, but I was excited about that one. It's a lot of fun. It's stupid, over the top, campy kind of fun, and which is a shame, because when this guy started, he was a straight up horror character. But the reason that Freddy's legacy isn't as strong as it once was is because he went from horrible, gruesome, nightmarish villain to almost like, I hesitate to say anti-hero, but you would start to watch Nightmare on Elm Street to sort of almost cheer on Freddy and like cackle at his little nightmarish James Bond style quips. He became like a celebrity in his own movies, and they kind of dealt with that in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, where we were in a universe where the actors from the original Nightmare on Elm Street played themselves, and Robert Englund, the guy that plays Freddy Krueger, was in it as himself, but Freddy crossed over into the real world as well. It was quite meta and clever, and a definite forerunner of Scream, which of course Wes Craven helmed as well. So yeah, because I remember being a little boy in the primary school, in the playground, and we were all the kids were talking about this Nightmare on Elm Street film, and how kids who watched it had been so afraid to go to sleep that they'd actually cut their eyelids off. Now, of course, that never happened. That was something that was referenced in the movie, I later found out. But the panic and the fear that this film spread, and I'm sure I watched it at far too young an age, but before we'd even seen it, he'd become like a boogeyman in real life in the playground. And I'm just not sure there's any horror properties of the last 20 odd years that have that kind of power. But again, a lot of that is over familiarity and over saturation. I've got a soft spot for the third one, Dream Warriors. Especially there's a scene where there's a mute kid. Is he mute? Is it the kid that's mute? Falls asleep. It's in he's picking off kids in a psychiatric ward, people that have seen Freddy. Of course, very few people believed them in the other movies, but when they're in a psych ward, they're even more sitting ducks. So he slashes the kid's arms in his dream and pulls out his veins and works him about like a puppet. Oh Christ, again, I haven't seen that film in years, but that still makes me go, oh fuck. This is really horrible. But you get lines, one of the girls falls asleep watching TV, and Zsa Zsa Gabor is on the TV being interviewed, and as the girl's watching that interview, she falls asleep, and suddenly the interviewer is Freddy Krueger, and he says something like, "Shut up, bitch!" And then he kills the girl by lifting her up and smashing her head through the TV, before which he says, "Time for your big close-up," or something like that. And I can't actually, after watching Rick and Morty and the, what's he called, Scary Terry, there's a lampoon of Freddy Krueger in an early Rick and Morty episode where he's the Scary Terry, and he's got giant testicles just under his chin, and he says bitch all the time. "Oh, that's nice, bitch." So I always think of that. But yeah, over familiarity, and they tried to bring it back to basics when they rebooted it, Nightmare on Elm Street, with your man who was Rorschach in The Watchmen. "I'm not in here with you, you're in here with me." That guy. Shit, he's really famous. He was in Preacher as well. He was in the first season of Preacher. He was like the mayor or the main dude in the town. Really famous guy. I'm so sorry I've forgotten your name, pal, but you were shite as Freddy Krueger, so it doesn't really matter. He was. They did a new one. They tried to re-emphasise the sort of the scare factor, but it just didn't work. I mean, there's something to be said that Robert Englund is Freddy. It's really hard to recast him, like the voice and the appearance and the physicality, which is something that could be said of this guy as well. Old Pinhead from the Hellraiser movies. Jesus Christ, there's been, I can't give it an exact number, but I can tell you that there have been too many Hellraiser movies. And they have recast Pinhead twice. Once with, oh my god, the guy looked like Darth Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi after he'd had his mask taken off. And sounded like a high school girl that had just taken a hit from a helium balloon. It was awful. And I think it's a woman now. And although people would go, oh, fucking everything's been rebooted for women, fuck's sake, woke, fucking... I think in the original novella there's an androgynous quality to Pinhead. I don't really care. I'm not going to watch it because whether it's a man, a woman, an animal, a fucking avocado that plays Pinhead, I can tell you that this is not a series that is going to get better through making more and more and more of them, because you can definitely see Hellraiser 1 and 2, Clive Barker, the man that wrote the original novella upon which it's based and who is a terrific horror writer, very, very imagistic, very gifted with language, very very good. I'm going to stop saying very and then coming up with inadequate adjectives. He's a great writer. But the first two are very gothic and very kind of what would I best describe it? They're just weird, not like any horror movie you've seen. Kind of baroque, body horror, and kind of there's maybe some elements of Clive Barker's experiences of coming out and being gay at a time when it wasn't really accepted or understood. It's really the first one, and this puzzle box that opens a portal to hell and kind of careful what you wish for and all that kind of thing. They're gruesome and they're inventive and they're different. And then they kept making more of them. And then the third one, Pinhead isn't really the star for the first two. He hardly appears in the first one, but they obviously thought, oh man, people like these films, it must be this guy, let's make him the star. And the third one was kind of okay, but it just went full on horror action movie. And again, this guy starts wisecracking and coming out with little pithy speeches and stuff like that. And and then they didn't wait as long as they did with the Friday the 13th series. They just went, part 4, this motherfucker's going to space. And I've got a soft spot for that one. It's a cool idea, because whoever opens the box is cursed, so they up in space they get these robot hands in a locked chamber to release him, and then he's trapped and they're going to shoot him out into space. Doesn't go according to plan, but it's actually alright. And then it's straight to video all the way. Terrible. If you're at all interested, I wrote a piece on the first 8 Hellraiser movies for Den of Geek. You can probably find it if you Google online. It's quite a good piece, if I do say so myself. But I haven't written about the other fucking 3 because I just can't face it. I'm too weary. So that's the pedigree, that's the lineage. We can't really talk about this guy because he's not the sort of evil horror protagonist. But good God, I love this guy. Army of Darkness, the third Evil Dead movie was one of my favourite movies when I was a teenager. Loved it. Very funny. But again, it went from horror with a blend of comedy. It kind of went full comedy with a bit of horror, and it worked. And they did Ash versus the Evil Dead, a TV series recently, brought Bruce Campbell back, and that, I was gutted when they cancelled it. It's hilarious. I don't think there's many TV shows where you will see demons attacking a man in a sperm bank and vials of cum being used as a weapon. I just don't think you'll see that anywhere else, and it's fucking hilarious. It's just great. Why did you cancel this show? Why did you cancel it? But yeah, so that's it. So all of them, they may have started good, they might have had one, maybe two at a push good films in them, but the well is run dry. They've been flogged to death, which is why when I found out they were making a TV show about this guy, I wasn't really that excited, but a kind of morbid curiosity, well, you know, nostalgia as well, pulled me towards it. And I'm going to talk about that in another video and tell you what I thought of it and tell you whether I think it's worth watching and whether Chucky has broke the curse of all these guys who, boys, you fucked it. Did Chucky do any better? Find out next time. Thanks for listening, folks. If you like the videos that I do, solo or with my sister and other special guests, please subscribe. And that sounded really desperate, didn't it? Please, please, I'll be your best friend. Subscribe if you want, I don't give a fuck. No, please, please subscribe. Please, I need the validation. And I'd eventually like to monetize. Not that that's your concern, you know, that's me, but, you know, I'm not going to cut you in on it. There's nothing in it for you, apart from continued enjoyment. And even if you've watched this video all the way through, and you have fucking hated every second of it, thanks for watching anyway. Have a lovely night, or day, or afternoon, whatever time. This has to stop, otherwise my goodbye is going to be as long as the first part of the video. Folks, it's been a pleasure. Goodbye.